and welcome to Modify It For Me, a game series where I take games rated for ages 8 plus and modify them to play with children as young as 5. So today I'm going to feature Sunflower Valley by Hobby World International and Playroom. Sunflower Valley is a really fun roll and write for 2 to 5 players ages 8 plus. I think it's great for the whole family and it's also fun for a light night with friends, but I'm going to modify it today so we can play with even younger players. So to modify Sunflower Valley, we have to take a few things down a notch. Firstly, we're going to change in and out some components to make them more kid-friendly. Then we're going to adjust the luck in this game with the drafting and the rolling by adding in a reroll rule. Next, we're going to slightly modify some of the placement rules. And finally, we're going to simplify the scoring system. This game has a little bit of a complex scoring system, and we want to simplify that so that kids can have an opportunity to score well. We need to change a few things around with the components to begin. We'll start by removing the markers and swapping them for washable ones. The rulebook states they may stain clothing, so if your children are really young, you might want to swap those out. This also gives us the opportunity to add some colour into the valley, but just be mindful to use strong colours which will show up against the vibrant hexes. Now to make the dice rolling easier, we can simply add the box lid into our setup and have children roll in that. The rest of the components will stay the same. Now it's time to set up. Now to set up, we'll begin with our dice in our dice tray in the centre of the table alongside the main player board. Players will see one set of markers and then select one player sheet. There are a number of different player sheets to choose from which have different letters on them. All players must have a sheet with the same letter. The first player will then receive the first player token to begin. Find a fun way to decide the first player, like the person who does the best train impression maybe. To set up our personal player boards, we also need to start by drawing a house and 2 villages. To find out where your house will be placed, you look at the city in the bottom corner of your player board and compare it to the back of the main player board, which you flip over. You will then draw your house in the corresponding hex and add 2 villages to the side of your board. For our game setup, we are also going to cross out some of the scoring sections at the bottom that we're going to ignore throughout the game, but I'll talk more about that in the next section. Now it's time to play. So one of the first things before we dive into the gameplay is to remember that with the really young players, they're still learning to draw. So it's important at the start of the game to get an idea for how they're drawing certain symbols. Some of them might be a little less recognizable than others. That's an important thing to look for. Let's first take a look at the different symbols we'll use to create our valley. Houses provide players with 2 villages. Each house needs 1 sheep in an adjacent place. Sunflowers next to mountains gain points. Super sunflowers give players an extra villager and score the same as regular sunflowers. And straight and curved railroads connect houses. The first player rolls all 6 dice. Beginning with the player to the left of the first player, players will select 1 die from the reserve and claim a colour on the main playing board. They will then draw the selected symbol in a free hex of the same colour on their personal playing board. This continues until there are no coloured spaces left on the main player board, keeping in mind there will always be 1 unused die. The modifications we'll make is to add the opportunity for re-rolling. When there are only 2 dice remaining in the reserve, a player may choose to re-roll those dice once. If a player has no free hexes on their board of colours available, they instead draw 1 regular sunflower anywhere in their valley. The other gameplay modifications we'll make is to the railroad placement. In the core rules, curved railroads must be drawn in a certain way like this or this. However, by allowing children the option to draw the railroad with a sharp bend as well, this again gives them more control in the world they are building and doesn't affect gameplay. Play continues until each player has filled their valleys entirely. The main modifications we'll make to this game is in the scoring. In the core game there are 6 ways to score. We're going to reduce that to 4 ways. Firstly, the houses with a sheep adjacent are worth 3 points each. We will not be giving negative points for houses without sheep. The player with the most sunflowers in each coloured area will gain 3 points per area majority. Sunflowers next to mountains gain 1 point per adjacency. We have 5 victory points going to the player with the most villages, 3 points to the player with the second most. We will not use the Valley Express or settlements. You'll then add all your points up and the player with the most victory points wins. So now it's time to level up, which you know is my favourite part. This means your kids are moving back towards the base game rules. That's great, it's exciting for everybody. The first thing you can do, and it's totally optional, is to change those components back to the original game. I don't think it's super necessary, and personally I enjoy the colour. The next thing you're going to want to do, and this one is an important one, is we're going to get rid of that reroll rule. Now you do this early because you want your kids to start moving towards strategizing heavier with the luck and with drafting. Then you're going to tweak those placement rules of the railroads back to the original requirements, and that's going to help us with our next level up, which is with scoring. And finally, of course, the scoring. So this is where we're going to add that minus points back in for having houses without sheep. It's a little bit of a rough one, so test the waters here. And then finally, we're going to add the Valley Express and settlements back in. Now, settlements allow people to cluster houses together, and the Valley Express awards the person for having the most houses connected by 2 or more railroads. That's why we needed those placement rules to be modified back in. The important thing, as always, is to have fun with it and listen to your kids. You're going to get better at this as you go, of reading when they're ready to start adding new things in without them having to tell you, and just enjoy. Here's a quick summary for you to jump back to if you need a refresher later. Thank you for modifying it with me. I hope you enjoy this series, and I'll see you next time.